After the huge success of Hellraiser, Clive Barker had cemented himself as a horror legend. He was a world-celebrated horror author and one of the hottest new horror directors around. He had struck gold with Pinhead and Company, and pressure was on to repeat that success. Directly after Hellraiser, Barker helped pen the script for Hellraiser 2, Hellbound in 1988, but we're not covering that one as Barker took more of a backseat role with that franchise. Barker was also busy in 1988 writing and releasing a short novel by the name Cabal. Cabal was an interesting story as it dealt with elements and themes that Barker briefly touched on in his 1985 script Underworld. Well, Barker would adapt Cabal into a script, and it would be his sophomore directing outing and his follow-up to the massive successful hit Hellraiser. Barker found funding for his next project with another American film company, this time with relative newcomer Morgan Creek Entertainment. While Hellraiser was made with a budget of roughly $2 million, Barker was given a huge budget of $11 million to work on his Cabal adaptation, which would eventually be known as Nightbreed. This was to be Barker's grandest, most ambitious film yet. He kept on much of the cast and crew of his previous movies like Hellraiser, had a great story to adapt, had all the money in the world, and he had grown as a director. He was set up for success, but success is never a guarantee. Even with all the odds in one's favor, there is always a chance of failure. And just like Icarus flying too close to the sun, Nightbreed is sadly a tale of failed ambition. Before we dive into why Nightbreed is considered a failure, we should probably talk about the plot. But there's the rub. What version of Nightbreed do we talk about? Should I review the theatrical cut, the Cabal cut, or the director's cut? What's the big deal, I hear you asking? The different versions probably just have a few frames of added gore or nudity, maybe a scene or two that was cut from the original film due to pacing, like most director's cuts or unrated cuts. Right? Wrong. All three versions are very different from one another, and we'll talk about some of the differences later, but trust me when I say, this film had a rough past. Since this is a month-long retrospective on Clive Barker and his films, I've decided to review the director's cut of Nightbreed since this was Barker's original vision. So, if you saw the film in the 90s or early 2000s, some scenes and themes may feel a bit different, but bear with me. Nightbreed begins with a whimsical dream sequence of flashes of monsters running throughout a graveyard approaching the cemetery gate. Aaron Boone wakes up from this dream with his girlfriend Lori beside him. We find out that this is a reoccurring dream about Midian, a dark place full of monsters, and this dream has given Boone anxiety and problems in the past. Boone had seen his psychiatrist, Dr. Decker, about these dreams, but Boone feels like he's better now. Well, psychiatrist Dr. Decker has been calling Boone non-stop, and when Boone eventually visits the doctor again, shit hits the fan. The police have contacted Dr. Decker about some murders and wondered if any of his patients were capable of such an act. There is a masked killer going around murdering families. Decker thinks it was Boone. Decker doesn't want to believe it, but knows Boone has mentioned these families and homes during his hypnotic sessions. Boone has described these incidents clearly in his sleep, and Decker has it all on tape. Decker is a nice guy. He gives Boone some drugs and tells him to go to the police. Boone is torn up about the thought of being a killer, and we get a few scenes that weren't in the theatrical cut. Boone burns every trace of himself with pictures of him and Lori on the bed. He then travels to the nightclub where Lori is performing and cries while he watches her. He goes to the highway and jumps in front of a semi, but somehow survives. While in the hospital, he hears a man talking to himself. This is Narcissus, and he knows about Midian too, this magical land of monsters and beasts that live beyond death. Narcissus thinks Boone was sent by Midian to see if he was worthy, so Narcissus cuts off his own face. Cool. Boone escapes the hospital as Decker chases after him with the police. Boone is able to find Midian with Narcissus' directions, but it's just a hodgepodge of map paintings, location, and soundstage. Boone falls asleep and is woken up by monsters. Through some quick dialogue, we find out that Boone never killed anyone. The monsters are forbidden to eat humans, but Peliquin takes a bite out of Boone.
I want meat. Looks like meat's back on the menu, boys.
As Boone runs away from the monsters, he runs into Decker and the police. Decker claims Boone has a gun, and the police open fire on him, leaving Boone dead. After they take his body to the morgue, that magical bite starts working, and Boone escapes off the slab and runs back to Midian. Laurie is torn up about all of this and tries to chase after him. Turns out that the Nightbreed live in Midian. It's a race of monsters that have been shunned by the outside world. They live in peace and have formed a friendly society. Boone joins forces with the Nightbreed while Laurie continues to look for him. And who's that on Laurie's tail? None other than the masked slasher. I don't want to give away too much, but the film ends with mankind wanting to kill all the monsters of Midian because they are viewed as outsiders. Society wants a mass extinction of anything that isn't their own kind. As you can see, there's a lot of underlying themes found throughout Nightbreed, and audiences are supposed to side with the monsters. As a film company though, how do you market that? I mean, monsters aren't supposed to be sympathetic, they're not supposed to be interesting. Plus, we're barely out of the 80s. And you know what was popular in the 80s? Slasher movies. Oh, the logic of studio executives. Yes, there was a masked killer, but it was never supposed to be the focal point of the film. Sort of like how the Cenobites in Hellraiser aren't the main focal point in that movie either. The masked killer in Nightbreed and the Cenobites in Hellraiser are more of a catalyst to help progress the story, merely a tool to get the plot going. Well, you know studios, they demanded reshoots and added extra scenes to showcase the masked killer more and to build up the violence of the Nightbreed, which just goes to show that studio execs had no faith in the original themes. Barker was furious with the studio interference, and he saw his beloved project slowly slip from his fingers. With the theatrical cut as it was, Barker couldn't even defend his work. None of the actors or crew members liked the theatrical cut. The brilliance of the script was gone, the love of the characters had disappeared, and all that was left was a fantastical mess that barely resembled Barker's vision. Nightbreed was deemed a flop and only made roughly $8 to $16 million. Fans eventually became aware of the studio's interference, and Nightbreed slowly became a cult favorite. Some hardcore horror fans were able to track down some footage that was thought to be lost of Barker's original idea, and they made a new version of the film. This new version had the DVD release of Nightbreed with the VHS inserts cut into it, and it was known as the Cabal Cut. Almost every shot made it into the Cabal Cut, which made it unnecessarily bloated. Well, in 2014, the good folks at Scream Factory helped find all the missing camera negatives, and Barker was given a chance to make a director's cut for the very first time. He could correct all his wrongs. This cut would help heal the wounds of failure. 45 unseen minutes were added to the director's cut, but 25 minutes of the theatrical cut was taken out, so it's only 20 minutes longer than the theatrical cut. And what a difference the director's cut makes! It's actually watchable now. Yeah, I was never the biggest fan of Nightbreed, but let me defend myself. As a sophomore in high school, I was unaware of the movie, but I read the novel Cabal for a book report. I loved it so much that I got permission to make a movie of Cabal instead of writing a report, and so I made a short film based on the first few chapters. My little film ended once Boone was shot dead at Midian. I used dialogue verbatim from the book, and here's a scene of the masked killer. Can't use the volume though because I used a ton of copyrighted songs. Well, I found out about the movie while I was filming my own, and I watched it once mine was finished. I didn't love it. I felt like the movie lost a lot of the power the novel had. This was my first time watching the director's cut, and the film is significantly better. Is it perfect? Far from it, but at least it's enjoyable now. I think I spoiled myself with a much better novel first. Same thing happened with The Shining for me, and that's why you don't read, you just watch movies, folks. If you're a fan of Barker, then you'll recognize a lot of familiar faces. There's Doug Bradley, of course, who played Pinhead, Simon Bamford, who played Butterball, and Nicholas Vince, who played the Chatterer. Barker was also a huge fan of David Cronenberg's work.
One of the greatest horror movie makers in the world, David Cronenberg.
So we had him play Dr. Decker, which is pretty awesome. Cronenberg actually gives a pretty great performance for not being an actor. And Bobby also had a heck of a performance. She looked so familiar to me, so I looked up what she was in. Oh, she was in Happiness? This one's disturbing. Don't watch it. Craig Sheffer does an okay job, but he comes across as unpolished in this one. Maybe he wasn't given enough to work with, but I'm just not a fan of him in Nightbreed. Funny though, because I loved him in another Barker-esque movie, Hellraiser 5. Makeup was done by longtime collaborator Bob Keane, and holy crap, there are so many awesome monster designs. The imagination is through the roof. I love Lylesburg, Baphomet, Peloquin, but my favorite is Shauna Sassy. Shauna Sassy actually has a lot in relation to Pinhead. Originally, when Clive would draw the Hell Priest Pinhead, he drew him with quills. Well, there was no way they could do an elaborate suit in Hellraiser due to the limited budget, so they settled with pins for him. So it's great to see the design returning and in such an iconic way. Speaking of the monsters and of Midian, Nightbreed is arguably more impactful now than ever before. I was gonna say there's a lot of themes about empowering minorities, but that's not really the case. It's more about acceptance and humanizing all minorities. And that's an important lesson in today's world. Even if you've never been outcast by your gender, race, sexuality, identity, we can all relate to these themes and learn that every person is just that. We are all humans going through life on our own journey together. Life is about not only accepting your own journey, but having respect and accepting everyone else's. Nightbreed is less of a film about horrific images and scary scenes, but more of a fantastical look into a fantasy world where the true monsters are the ones who look back at you in your mirror. The true monsters are the ones who dictate the rules of a society, the ones who forge and force ideas based on fear, not facts, the ones we see surrounding us every day. Those are the true monsters, and when put like that, maybe that fantasy world is a bit easier to believe. The failure of Nightbreed would put Barker's directing career on halt. Instead, he would hand off the reins for his next project. And oh boy, is that next one sweet. So I'll see you on Thursday, and in the meantime, stay spooky, everyone. Thank you so much for watching. If you like what I do and want to support the channel, please consider subscribing or by buying me a coffee in the description below. Any bit helps. Thank you, and take care.